Hello everyone, I'm Steve Savant, syndicated financial columnist and money color commentator. On today's show, the myths and material facts of bankruptcy, part 3 of our Wiser Advisor series with attorney Mallory Powers. Welcome to the show, Mallory.
Thank you.
Boy, I'm thinking bankruptcy, kind of a downer subject. Most people are kind of like, hey, bankruptcy. But I know there's a lot of myths out there, and there are people that got in trouble. And boy, 2008 and 9, everybody took it in the wallet and purse because real estate went down, and everybody, a lot of people got hurt.
Right.
Bankruptcy is really built for the person who has gotten a situation. They're not trying to, stiff their creditors or anything else. They really got into a problem.
Right.
Now, Mallory, there's a lot of places you could play as an attorney. You're in bankruptcy, and you love it. Well, talk to about that. I never heard anybody, I love bankruptcy, right?
I do. I feel like I'm helping people by helping them figure out how to deal with the situations they got into, whether that's a foreclosure, they got a divorce, they had a medical event that they didn't expect, they were fired from a job, or a company that they had failed. I like being able to help them through that and allowing them to have their fresh start.
Wait a minute, let me ask you about your fresh start. Is there life after bankruptcy?
There is. I have, in my entire time doing bankruptcy, I haven't had a client who has said that things got worse after bankruptcy. So, people are concerned with their credit, but that's usually not an issue.
Well, why is that, though? That sounds so counterintuitive.
So most of the time, people's credit is already low when they are looking to file bankruptcy.
They already have problems.
Right. They've already missed payments, stopped paying, they're going into foreclosure, they have garnishments. The issues are endless. So your credit is already low. So when you file a bankruptcy, you might take a hit to your credit score, but after that, you're able to rebound. You just prove to the credit bureaus that you can start making payments and you can continue making payments and you establish that history with them. And then your credit score starts rebuilding itself.
Well, let me just ask you. Let's say I just do Chapter 7, the I call nuclear option.
Yeah.
All right, you do Chapter 7. How long before you can maybe have a normal credit card and you can get a mortgage again and your real estate, you can go get an auto lease or loan?
I have, all my clients have said that right after they file bankruptcy, they get tons of credit offers. And that's because the credit card companies are scouring public records for people who filed bankruptcy who are free of all their debt and now have the ability to rack up more debt. It sounds kind of bad on the credit card
to me.
side, but it is a good opportunity for someone who's filed bankruptcy to restart their credit rebuilding process.
Well, now in this credit rebuilding process, am I going to pay through the nose, though, with this new credit? Because, I've kind of been a risk in my past. Right.
They might give you a really high interest rate, which is fine. You just have to be cautious about that and make sure anything that you're spending, you're repaying right away. That way you can prove that you can be responsible about what you're spending and paying it off. So the income that you have can pay off the debt that you have.
How long do you think by the time I file, when can I get back into the maybe 700 range in credit score? How long does it take to really recover and become somewhat of a normal citizen again?
There are so many credit rebuilding programs out there now that most of them say within 24 months after filing bankruptcy. So a lot of it has to do with secure debt. You're able to, buy a car, buy a house, and start rebuilding. I had a client who came back to me 2 years after filing bankruptcy and said that they worked on their credit those entire 2 years and were pre-approved for a home mortgage.
Wow, unbelievable.
Yeah.
All right, so it's not the death knell that everybody thinks it is. That's our first myth. How about what I'm talking about? How important is it if you're dating in this society in the 21st century to make sure Mr. Right isn't Mr. Wrong on the financial side of this equation?
It is important. There's community property laws that can protect you in some sense, but if you're married for a long time and this debt has been racking up over time, you're probably going to be stuck with it. So when you're married, you can file separately. Your spouse doesn't have to file bankruptcy with you, but in most cases, you want to because you are responsible for that debt as well.
Even though he had filed.
Right.
But if you're dating, Mallory, if you're dating, are you going to check this before you say I do? Are you going to say, give me your balance sheet?
I think you get to a point in relationships where that's a conversation you need to have and make sure that you are not going to be taking on all this debt. And one of the things that comes down to is when you are going to purchase a house and they're looking at your debt to income ratio. That's going to become important, and it's going to become open to everybody.
Well, let me stop you there. Millennials coming into life and career with monster IOUs to student loans. And that can crimp your style of getting a home.
Right.
And it's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, I want to know, is student loans dischargeable in bankruptcy?
They can be.
They can be.
They can be. In most situations, the answer is no. If you have a job, the answer is probably no. But they can be. You have to prove an undue hardship. So to prove that, you have to, there are several factors that the court's going to look at. They're going to look at whether the undue hardship is going to continue after the bankruptcy. So, you know, maybe you have a bunch of credit card debt, you have a car loan, you have a home loan, and the student loans. But then when you file bankruptcy, you're getting rid of all your credit card debt, maybe medical debt. You might stick with your mortgage, you might stick with your car loan, but you still have that student loan. So once you get rid of all that other stuff, can you pay your student loans? Most times, that's a yes. And sometimes the courts actually will give you a partial discharge. So they'll say, well, we'll get rid of some of it, but you have to continue paying the rest. And the cases that I've seen is, you know, a lady who had she was on Social Security disability. She had 4 kids that she was still supporting who were adults, 2 of which were on disability themselves. And she actually had a master's degree. And she just couldn't do anything because she was stuck supporting her family and herself, and she couldn't get on the right path. And they actually gave her a discharge of her student loans. Wow.
So, but I thought I just heard you say also, you had people, they were cherry picking what they will keep as debt, mortgage, and maybe a house, but they could discharge this. Now I have enough to maybe have the cash flow to pay down my student loan, which is big in a lot of millennials' cases.
Yeah, you can make that decision. You can enter a bankruptcy with a car and a house and loans on those, and you want to keep them. If you want to keep them, you have to continue paying them. You can't just keep your things and not pay them.
Now, is there, instead of doing the nuclear option, is filing for 13 or 11, and give me the distinction between the two, are those two worth looking at?
And 11 is not as much of a consumer bankruptcy. It's more for businesses. But a Chapter 13 bankruptcy is a reorganization type bankruptcy. You might have a lot of tax debt, which is also sometimes dischargeable, sometimes not. So in a Chapter 13, if you come in with just $20,000 of tax debt and that's the only debt that you have, you can pay off that tax debt over time in the 13.
Does that affect your credit though?
It does. Filing any bankruptcy will affect your credit regardless of the chapter. So it still affects your credit. No matter what chapter, it's still on your credit report for 7 to 10 years. But you also have that ability to rebuild. In a Chapter 13, you don't get your discharge until you've repaid your plan, your reorganization plan. So your credit score opportunity to rebuild doesn't happen until your discharge, which might be 3 or 5 years.
Which is, if a 7, you could have maybe been out in 3 years.
Way less than that.
Less
you get
than
your
that.
discharge in about 3 or 4 months in a Chapter 7 in most cases.
So tell me, if I'm a consumer today and I'm up against it, why would I then do 13 then?
Yeah, there's a lot of different reasons. Again, tax debt, student loans maybe, something that you need to pay off over time. If you don't qualify for a 7, you make too much money, you might only be able to do a Chapter 13. I previously had someone who had, $20,000 in arrears on their mortgage. They tried to do a loan modification on the home, and the lender wouldn't allow them to do it. They wouldn't work with them. They filed for their Chapter 13 with just the arrears as their debt. Then they filed for a loan modification again and worked with me through my office, and I worked with an attorney for the lender. We were able to get the loan modification done, and then they got their discharge in bankruptcy because there's no more debt. They paid the rest off. So then they got their loan modification and discharge debt-free. And
is it pretty expensive to file Chapters 13 or 7? Is there a lot of money involved in this?
If you use an attorney, you're paying attorney's fees, but they have to be flat fees in most cases. So you know what you're paying. And honestly, I think it's worth it. You can do it yourself, But why are you going to take the risk that something's going to go wrong or that you are going to make the wrong step?
Or in my case, I would say, if you can't manage your finances and you're heading for Chapter 7, I wouldn't be trying to manage bankruptcy.
Right.
Thank you so much, Mallory. Listen, don't forget to watch our next segment on hiring general contractor for your finance, part 4 of our Wiser Advisor series. And keep in mind, before moving forward with any of the ideas on the show, always check with your tax consultant, legal counsel, and financial advisor. You've been watching Steve Savant's Money, the name of the show.